Hello and welcome to episode 99. In this episode I return to my coverage of Iain M. Banks' series of science fiction novels focusing on the culture. To catch up, be sure to listen to my thoughts on the short story collection The State of the Art in episode 90 and the first culture novel Consider Phlebas in episode 93. This time the series continues with the second novel, the well-respected The Player of Games, originally published in 1988. Janau Marat Gerger is a citizen of the culture, one of many teeming billions in the post-scarcity interstellar civilization. He has a special talent, however, which marks him out as unique. He is a game player of legendary skill. Over his lifetime, he has mastered every card, board and computer-based game that is known to the culture. Constant success breeds boredom, and so Gerger becomes restless. Eventually, he receives word of a remarkable new challenge, which he is later forced to accept. His mission is to travel to the distant Empire of Azad, a decadent and cruel star-faring society which uses a game to determine its political hierarchy. The game of Azad is so dizzyingly complex that even Gerger may not be able to learn it during the years-long journey. When he arrives, he finds that there's more at stake than his reputation. The fate of civilizations may be on the table. The Player of Games is the second novel to be published in Iain M. Banks' revered culture cycle, following Consider Phlebas from 1987. It's often thought to be one of the more popular of the books, and is sometimes suggested to be a good starting point. It's an engaging character study of Gerger, and a story which deals cleverly with themes of power, manipulation, and the nature of games. One criticism of Consider Phlebas as a starting point in the series is that it's a story told from the perspective of an outsider and enemy of the culture. The Player of Games takes a different approach. Janau Marat Gerger is in many ways a typical culture citizen. He lives on a vast artificial habitat, Chiark Orbital, and enjoys all the comforts of his civilization. He attends social functions and has many friends, both human and drone. What makes Gerger exceptional is his prodigious ability as a player of games. He not only plays games, but also designs his own and contributes to scholarly studies of the subject. It's this talent which triggers the relatively simple but satisfying plot of the book. The culture's intelligence agency, Special Circumstances, seizes on both Gerger's skills and his jaded boredom. They coax him to visit the Empire of Azad, even though it means giving up years of his life. When Gerger arrives in the Empire, he's given a knowledgeable local escort and gradually explores this society, which has been carefully studied by the culture for some time. Gradually he begins to understand that while the Empire is decadent on the surface, it's truly depraved and cruel underneath. Over time, Gerger suspects that his mission has greater strategic significance for the Lighten culture, which is diametrically opposed to the Empire's brutal ways. Initially, Gerger struggles to understand the immensely complex game of Azad, despite the training and support provided by his ship's computer. Eventually he discovers a potent talent for it, and becomes a serious contender. By eliminating various rivals with strong religious and military connections, Gerger climbs the Empire's hierarchy. This threatens to set up a confrontation with the Emperor himself, and might determine the future of the entire empire. One striking aspect of the Player of Games is its structure. While Consider Phlebas had a strongly episodic structure, this book comprises one single narrative which is somewhat more concise. The book consistently follows Gerger and his actions, both on Chiark Orbital and later in the Empire of Azad. As a character, Gerger has some similarities with Louis Gridley Wu, the lead character in Larry Niven's novel Ringworld from 1970. Both are jaded, bored citizens of an interstellar civilization looking to get more out of life. While the plot is strongly linked to the Game of Azad, Banks never really describes it in any detail. Initially, we learn only that it's extremely complex, that it's played over a series of sprawling boards, and that it's common for players to form alliances in a bid to eliminate others. Later, Banks reveals that in later rounds, it's common for players to make grisly bets to spice up the action. Losing might mean being castrated or suffering some other mutilation. This detail reinforces the depraved nature of the Empire. While Banks did have a strong interest in games, the novel is really more concerned with games as a means to explore the concept of power. While Gerger believes himself to be a player, he gradually realises he's also a pawn in a much larger game with far greater stakes. Once again, Banks explores the moral dimension of the culture. It's enlightened and it values freedom, but to achieve this it exploits and manipulates Gerger and interferes in the internal politics of the Empire of Azad. The reader is left to draw their own conclusions about the morality of this, just as they must imagine what the game itself might look like or how it might play. Despite these weighty themes, the Player of Games also contains some flashes of Banks' trademark humour. This comes across especially in Gerger's interactions with the drones in his life, sentient machines afforded citizenship and personhood in the culture. The Player of Games is a very different book to Consider Phlebas, which reflects Banks' evolving style at the time. It's less action-oriented and has a more direct and conventional narrative. It explores more aspects of the culture, and especially the way it interacts with other civilizations. These themes will recur in the third novel in the series, and probably the most celebrated: use of weapons. Thanks for listening to this episode. You can find more of my writing in text and audio form at my site andyjohnson.xyz. You can also find me on Twitter at AndyJohnsonUK, and you can support me at patreon.com/AndyJohnson. Catch you next time.